When I first decided to start a garden, I thought it would be simple. You buy some seeds, put them in the ground, water them, and nature does the rest. That's what all the pictures on Instagram and YouTube thumbnails make it look like. Perfect raised beds, overflowing harvest baskets, and smiling gardeners holding giant tomatoes. What I wish I knew back then is that gardening is not about copying what looks good online, it's about understanding systems, timing, and patience. One of the biggest beginner mistakes is starting with too much confidence and not enough information. I planted way too many different plants at once tomatoes, peppers, herbs, leafy greens, all in the same season, all with different needs. I didn't understand spacing, sunlight requirements, or how aggressive some plants can be. Instead of a thriving garden, I ended up with overcrowded beds, weak plants, and constant frustration. Another thing I completely underestimated was how much planning matters before you ever touch the soil. At Smart Garden Lab, we talk a lot about preparation because skipping this step almost always leads to disappointment. I didn't test my soil, didn't check drainage, and didn't even know what type of soil I had. I just assumed dirt was dirt. That assumption alone cost me an entire growing season. Gardening also teaches you very quickly that mistakes don't show up immediately. You can do something wrong on day one and not see the consequences until weeks later. That delay makes it harder for beginners to learn, because by the time a plant fails, you don't always remember what caused it. Looking back, I wish I had slowed down, started smaller, and focused on learning instead of trying to impress myself with how much I could grow. If you're just starting out, understand this. The goal of your first garden isn't a huge harvest. The goal is education. Every mistake is data, and the faster you accept that mindset, the better your results will be long term.
If there's one thing I wish I understood earlier, it's that soil is not just a place to hold plants upright. Soil is the foundation of everything. Healthy plants don't start with seeds, they start with living soil. When I first began gardening, I spent hours researching plants, but almost no time learning about what was happening underground. I used cheap soil straight from bags without understanding what was inside them. Some were mostly wood filler, others drained too fast, and some held too much water. I didn't know about organic matter, microbial life, or why roots need both oxygen and moisture. As a result, my plants struggled even when I watered them correctly. At Smart Garden Lab, we emphasize soil improvement because it's the one investment that pays off every single season. Once I learned to amend my soil with compost, improve structure, and feed the soil instead of the plant, everything changed. Plants became stronger, more resilient, and far less dependent on constant attention. Another beginner mistake is over-fertilizing. I thought more nutrients meant faster growth, but I was wrong. Too much fertilizer can burn roots, encourage weak growth, and attract pests. Gardening isn't about forcing growth, it's about creating conditions where growth happens naturally. Understanding soil also helped me realize why some plants failed no matter what I did. It wasn't always my fault. Sometimes the environment simply wasn't right yet. Building good soil takes time, and beginners need to hear that it's okay if things don't work perfectly in year one. Soil improves slowly, but the results compound. If you remember nothing else, remember this. Great gardens are built from the ground up. Fix the soil, and half your problems disappear before they even start.
Watering seems simple, but it's one of the most misunderstood parts of gardening. When I started, I watered on a schedule instead of watering based on plant needs. Every morning, same amount, same routine. I thought consistency was the key, but what I didn't understand was that plants don't care about your schedule. They care about conditions. Overwatering was my biggest mistake. I assumed wilting meant plants needed more water, but often it was the opposite. Roots sitting in soggy soil can't breathe, and once root rot starts, it's very hard to recover. Underwatering, on the other hand, trains roots to grow deeper and stronger when done correctly. Through Smart Garden Lab, I learned to read the soil instead of the leaves.
Checking moisture levels below the surface, understanding evaporation, and adjusting watering based on weather made a huge difference. Hot, windy days dry soil faster. Cool, cloudy days don't. Simple knowledge, but incredibly powerful. Another mistake was watering from above too often. Wet leaves create the perfect environment for fungal diseases, especially in humid climates. Switching to drip irrigation and deep watering at the base of plants dramatically reduced disease and improved growth. Watering is less about frequency and more about intention. Deep, infrequent watering encourages strong roots. Shallow, frequent watering creates weak plants that panic the moment conditions change. One of the most painful beginner mistakes is choosing plants based on excitement instead of suitability. I planted things I liked to eat, not things that liked my climate. I ignored hardiness zones, seasonal timing, and how long each plant actually takes to mature. At Smart Garden Lab, we've always say, the best plant for your garden is the one that wants to grow where you live. Once I started choosing plants adapted to my region, everything became easier. Less pests, less disease, less work overall. I also didn't realize how much spacing matters. Crowded plants compete for light, nutrients, and airflow. That competition weakens them and invites problems. Giving plants enough room feels wasteful at first, but it's one of the smartest decisions you can make. Another mistake was not staggering planting times. I planted everything at once, which meant everything needed attention at the same time. Staggering reduces overwhelm and spreads harvests over longer periods. Gardening rewards patience and observation. The more you adapt your plant choices to your environment, the more nature works with you instead of against you. The biggest thing I wish I knew before starting a garden wasn't technical, it was mental. Gardening is not about control, it's about cooperation. Nature doesn't follow instructions, it responds to conditions. Once I stopped treating gardening like a checklist and started treating it like a conversation, everything changed. I paid attention, I observed patterns, I adjusted instead of forcing outcomes. Smart Garden Lab helped reinforce that gardening success comes from understanding systems, not chasing perfection. Mistakes aren't failures, they're feedback. Every season teaches you something new if you're willing to learn. The best gardeners aren't the ones who never fail, they're the ones who keep showing up. If you're just starting, keep it simple. Start small. Focus on soil, water correctly, choose the right plants, and most importantly, give yourself permission to learn. Your garden doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs time. And trust me, future you will be grateful you started.